I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends. Welcome to another episode of Ohio Politics Explained. Today, we'll discuss how the federal shutdown is affecting Ohioans who receive food assistance. We'll also dissect problems at Central State University and what might be in store for Ohio's new congressional map. Back in the studio today is Laura Bischoff.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Let's start with SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. Monthly benefits won't go out November 1st because of the federal government shutdown. In Ohio, that means $263 million for about 1.4 million people. In Washington, Republicans are blaming Democrats. Democrats are blaming Republicans. What are we hearing from state officials?
Well, just late this afternoon, the DeWine administration, along with the legislative leaders, Rob McCauley in the Senate and Matt Huffman in the House, put out a press release saying that they were going to provide $25 million in emergency food aid, $7 million to food banks, and about $18 million in emergency benefits to people who are on this thing called Ohio Works First. There's only 63,000 people on this, and it's for people who are at or below 50% of the federal poverty line. So this is, very, very low income folks. So that's 63,000 of the 1.4 million people who are on SNAP. So it's just, it's a small offering, 10 cents on the dollar really for the SNAP money that normally would come into the state, but it's a step.
Right. And we've heard from Ohio Democrats, especially in recent days, about the need for the state to do something. Democrats attempted to tweak some legislation on the floor this week to use the state's rainy day fund to cover the lapse in SNAP benefits, essentially. Republicans did not like that idea. They didn't want the state dipping into that account, saying that it would hurt the state's fiscal standing. And there was also a lot of partisan rhetoric about, again, whose fault this is. And so, to your point, this is something, but it's a very specific population that's going to be affected by this money.
Right. I mean, all across the country, we see that this is an inflection point. The inability to provide food assistance for low-income people because of this politically driven federal shutdown. It's hugely unpopular, along with not paying people, to go to work, expecting them to work without paychecks. But this is something that directly impacts Americans and their neighbors.
Right. I talked to Senator John Husted today and asked him, is there an end in sight to this? And Republicans are holding firm on the fact that they won't negotiate over things like subsidies under the Affordable Care Act until the government is open. But Husted said that he believes some Democrats are starting to come around, starting to feel the pressure of not just SNAP benefits, but federal workers not getting paid, airline delays, things like that. So he thinks there could be a change on the horizon in the next week or two. But, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, and also don't forget the Thanksgiving Day holiday travel season is coming up, and that could be another inflection point.
Our next topic is Central State University. Ohio's only public, historically Black university has been under fiscal watch for a year. Several elevators on campus were taken out of service because of safety issues, and one dorm didn't even have a working fire alarm. What is happening over there?
Oh, that's a very good question. About a year ago, the new president of Central State, President Cootie, alerted the Ohio Department of Higher Education that there were some financial irregularities and problems, and that kind of kicked off this intense oversight by state officials and trying to unravel what was going on, and also efforts by Central State to cut faculty positions, eliminate low numbered majors, kind of consolidate some stuff. They were also not collecting tuition from students and allowing them to register for classes for the following semester without having paid their bill.
Oh, wow.
And so they put in a policy of hey, look, you got to pay your bill before you can, if your bill is, anyway, you got to pay your bill.
And your story also said there were other issues of mismanagement, doling out scholarships when they hadn't necessarily budgeted for them. I mean, it just seems like it was a cascade of issues.
Yeah, it was a big, long laundry list. I think one of the biggest things that I was surprised at is that in 2015, the last time they were put on fiscal watch, they had signed a long-term contract with like a outside firm to do maintenance on the buildings. In this report that kind of listed all the problems, they said that the contractor was upcharging for things that should have been covered under the basic contract, like charging extra fees for it. But then also there was a lot of evidence that they weren't doing the work. So now there's this massive backlog that Governor DeWine calls extreme of undone maintenance. And one of those things that showed up was the fact that this dorm that housed 341 students didn't have a fire alarm, a working fire alarm. That is a tragedy waiting to happen right there.
What happens next? I know DeWine has said that helping Central State regroup is big on his to-do list before he leaves office next year. I mean, can things get turned around in a year?
No, I don't think they can be turned around. And the governor kind of indicated that. I think the next step is going to be, well, first off, get that fire alarm working. But then they're going to ask the controlling board to approve a contract with an architecture firm to go through and figure out what do the buildings all need, what should be the plan moving forward. However, I think politically, the DeWine administration and Central State is going to have to convince lawmakers that before they put any more money into this, there's a clear fix-it plan that will work.
Let's wrap up today with redistricting. October 31st is the deadline for the Ohio Redistricting Commission to pass a bipartisan congressional map. And it looks like there may be one on the table. As we're recording, our colleague Jesse Balmert is at a commission meeting, which means none of this is a done deal yet. But lawmakers appear on track to pass a map that would make life harder for Democrats Greg Landsman and Marcy Kaptur.
Yeah, so Jesse's reporting has been absolutely stellar on this whole issue for years now.
Yes.
And Cincinnati, it looks like Greg Landsman, it's going to be tougher for him to get reelected. Marcy Kaptur, one of Jesse's sources, said that the Republicans want to add like 10 more points of Republicans in that district. She narrowly beat Derek Marin the last time by like less than 1%. So yeah, they're going to make it tougher on those two incumbents, but it's going to be easier for Amelia Sykes, a Democrat from Akron. It looks like that district will become a little more blue.
Yeah, which was an interesting twist. I think this entire time we've heard Kaptur, Sykes, and Landsman as potential targets during this redistricting process. And starting in November, Republicans don't need Democrats to support their map. They can pass it entirely on their own. And so we're getting to the point where both sides are weighing the pros and cons of continuing this into November. If Democrats don't make a deal before, the end of Halloween, they could be facing a 13-2 map or something that looks politically worse for them than this does.
Yeah, the Democrats have long been in a weak position. They kind of have to figure out what's the least bad option. And I think the Democrats, the only recourse that they have is to file lawsuits and or put a map up for a ballot vote. Both of those options are expensive.
Right. It is interesting with this map to see how some Republicans have reacted to it. I think there was a hope among some Republicans that GOP leaders in Ohio would really go for it and expand the majority here more aggressively. We're seeing redistricting talked a lot about at the national level because President Donald Trump is trying to pad the U.S. House majority and ahead of next year's midterms. So it's a really hot topic right now. We're seeing Republicans in Texas, for example, electing to draw maps by choice in the middle of the decade. Ohio has to do this, but against that entire backdrop, it is interesting to see what people on the national scale think of Ohio's potential new map. And one more thing before you go. Halloween is my favorite holiday, and we could all use a break from politics to dress up and eat candy. So I hope you all have a great Halloween weekend and stay safe.